Hey, I'm really thrilled to be with you. I'm a peer of yours, served in healthcare for all my career as a CIO, and I know that the things I'm going to speak about, many of you can relate to, because we all do this at this level where we are in our careers. We all understand these principles, but I'm going to take you a level deeper. So these things will be familiar to you, but I'm going to challenge you in the next 25 minutes about getting deeper, because whether it's AI or remote work or whatever it is, the most important thing we do as leaders is make sure we have that human connection. And that's what I'm going to talk about, again, at a deep, deep level. So let's get right into it. So there's really three things. There's three things I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about it just through a couple of different slides. There's no words to read. But it's really about how do we make these connections. And so the first thing is, how do we engage our teams inside and outside of the workplace? And the second theme is about engaging regularly with our customers. I'm not talking about a photo op opportunity where you say, oh, look, I'm at this regional processing center or whatever your business might be. But I'm talking about deep and regular routines. And then finally, I think the main job that we have as leaders is connecting purpose. It's connecting head to heart. What is our job? How does it align with what we do on a daily basis? Because that's when you get transformation. So like many of you, I've been blessed to be part of organizations that are world-class. Like for me, being in healthcare, the most important thing is clinical quality. I've been blessed to be part of organizations that have the highest clinical quality in the world. And tech is a key reason, but not the main reason. And it's the same with our financials, right? Everyone can relate. Everyone has to have a balance sheet and a bottom line. I'm telling you, these sort of things that we're going to talk about impact that. And I've been part of organizations that went from good to great, and we leverage these principles. So the first thing is deep connections with your team in and outside of the workplace. And I know some people are still raised old school where we say, wait, we got to have a line. We don't mix personal and professional. But I think that's been debunked. In today's society, I think it's about blending the different environments that we serve in. So for me and my team, the reason that we've been successful is because we have very strong relationships outside of the workplace. So you as a leader, no matter where you are, I know some people are director level, some people are vice presidents, some people are CIOs, CDOs, no matter where you are, whatever your team is, you've got to engage with your team outside the workplace. So my team, we all know each other. We know each other's spouses, we know each other's kids. Once a quarter, someone takes responsibility and we meet somewhere different, somewhere outside of our homes, and we meet and we just have a fun weekend. And so it's deep connection because you know it's hard. It's tough sometimes. And so the last thing you want is a fragmented team. So you have to invest in your team in and out of the workplace. So I'm going to give you some more examples. I could give you tons of examples, but I'm just highlighting a couple. So none of these, again, are one-off opportunities. This is a lifestyle. It's a leadership style that will enable ultimate success and transformation for your organization. So I just threw a few pictures up there. So a lot of our teams, right, people are into sports. So we created the #1 team in Texas for doing what do they call it, obstacle courses, adventure races. And so we have an adventure race team. I go to everything. I go to recitals. Someone has a recital, I go. I'm engaged. Everyone knows I'm engaged with my employees. I have 1,100 employees. I'm engaged with all of them to the extent that they want me to be. I go to funerals, I go to weddings, I go to whatever it takes. I engage with my team in and outside the workplace. Probably the most extreme example, and the example I'll delve into a little bit, is we started climbing mountains together. Our theme at our health system, this was Texas Health Resources based out of Dallas, our theme strategy was about climbing a mountain, but no one had ever climbed a mountain. So I said, hey, let's go climb a mountain. And so we picked Kilimanjaro. So we've done more than just Kilimanjaro. Yeah, it's kind of like extreme. We started with a 14er in Colorado, and then worked our way up. So what happened is in Kilimanjaro, we realized that there was a Maasai village near Kilimanjaro. 10,000 Maasai villagers never had healthcare, never had any sort of automation. And so we're thinking around the table 9 months prior to our trip, we're thinking about, gee, what do we do? And I came up with this idea of, well, let's do education. We can do some education, things like that. And then one of the doctors sitting next to me, she elbowed me, and she's like, Ed, look around the table. We're mostly clinicians. Why don't we do a medical clinic? So out of her suggestion, we created Open Arms Clinic. in the Maasai village. So obviously the 9 months leading up to us going there and climbing Kilimanjaro, we worked with the government and we worked with the locals and we built this clinic. So finally the day came, right? We summited, everyone was successful. We summited Kilimanjaro and we were at the village. We lived with the villagers and it was the first day of the clinic. Thousands of people came. The president of Tanzania was there. Thousands of people came. The very first patient was a pregnant woman, 9 months pregnant, hadn't felt her baby in 2 days. And we were like, and I lost a lot of faith, and I was like, oh my gosh, not only is the baby dead, but the mother's gonna die, because this was a clinic of primary care. We couldn't do surgeries or anything like this in this clinic. And so it's like, oh my gosh, and then they were already suspect of us a little bit, right? Because we're Westerners, we're outsiders, and what are we doing in their society? And so I was like, they're going to turn on us as well. Like, we are the reason that this happened. And so it turns out that one of my 5 docs is an OBGYN. So he took the first patient, and he went into the room, and then his wife, who was the doctor who had the idea for the clinic, she went in to hold the patient's hand, because she's also a mother, and so she knew that she would need support, even though we didn't speak the same language, but we had a translator doing the Swahili. So after many minutes, and actually some innovation, and everyone was quiet, literally surrounded by thousands, we heard the cry of a baby. And so this is the neonatologist, another doctor that was with us, who helped deliver the baby. Yeah. And so the mom said to Dr. Ransom, she said, Dr. Ransom, what's your name? Because, she's the one that held her hand. She said, Elizabeth. She says, that's the name of my daughter as well. So she named her kid after my doc, Dr. Ransom, who had the idea 9 months before we had decided to build a clinic. So it's this sort of interconnection. Imagine now in the workplace, what a difference that makes in the workplace. When you've had this connection with people, the resilience of climbing a mountain, but then doing something wonderful together and bringing life to people. That wasn't the only life saved, but it happened to be the first one. And so we've been back many times. This is Dr. Ransom on the left and her husband, the OBGYN, on the right. And you see Daryl, the neonatologist, in the background there. And that's baby Elizabeth growing up. I have some pictures of her as a teenager now, but I wasn't able to get it on the slide in time. So that's what I'm talking about. Get these interconnections. So it's so important, not just in the workplace, but you have people over. That's the other thing. Open your home. Open your heart to your team. Over half my teams, and sometimes it's up to 80%, have been to my home at one time or another, because we want to celebrate with them. We want to just embrace them and let them know how important they are. So that's what I'm talking about, going deep. So I know all you know this about getting with your team in and outside the workplace, but I'm talking at a deep, continuous level. All right, so the next is your customers. For me, again, I'm going to use healthcare examples, but this translates to every one of your industries. So for me, my customers are 2, clinicians primarily and patients and families. Those are my 2 sets of customers. I engage with them deeply. How do I do it? I'll just give you a couple ideas. You can modify these ideas for your situation. So I had Wine with Ed every Wednesday evening. So wine was spelled W-H-I-N-E. And so at our hospitals, we had a hotel connected, and in the hotel was a bar and a restaurant. And so a lot of times after a busy day, clinicians might go over there. So I was over there every Wednesday evening, and they knew Ed Marx is there, and you can engage with Ed. And it's unheard of, right? Because you're in the C-suite, and people sort of say, oh, they're the untouchables, unapproachables. No, you make yourself, you go where you know your customers are. And so for them, I knew they'd be there. That was just one example. So here are several physicians. Every time I had different physicians. On Fridays, I do Walk with Ed. So we had a huge campus, as you can imagine. It's cold in Cleveland, so a lot of hallways that connect all these different hospitals. And so I would just walk as they rounded, and they could connect with me. So I created lots of opportunities to go deep with my clinicians. But that's just not the only example. So this is Dr. Lars Svensson, the gentleman who's standing behind me. He's the world's foremost cardiac surgeon. So at Cleveland Clinic, we are #1 in the world with cardiac care. The problem is, that's the crown jewel of the Cleveland Clinic, and Dr. Svensson, and for good reason, had his own IT. So I'm sure you've dealt with that before, shadow IT. How do you convince him to take the crown jewels of our organization that's treating people from around the world to give up his IT, to move to our data center as a first step? He had his own data center, was really bad. And I could have forced it, right? Like, you're in position of authority. I could have forced it. I would have won that battle, but I would have really lost in the long term. So instead, I got deep with clinicians. And I'm going to give you an example in a second. But with him, in addition to getting deep with clinicians, I invited him out to the data center. And so the COO came. So one of the gentlemen there is the COO, and then in the background is the data center manager. After 2 hours, I had to go because I had another event. He wanted to stay. He was taking pictures. He was ripping up floorboards. And he realized that a data center is like the cardiovascular system. There's like a heart, and there's arteries, and there's veins and capillaries. And he loved it. And a week later, he reached back out to me and said, we're ready to move our data center. So it's only because getting deep and understanding with them and inviting them in and being humble and transparent will you win in the long term. So it's about connecting with your customers, like in a deep, deep level. So another way I do it with patients is I volunteer. I volunteer weekly. I've done it for years and years and years. And for those who have kids and say, well, I can't volunteer, because I'm really busy at work and I've got kids at home. Well, guess what I did? I brought my kids with me to volunteer. So when they're age appropriate, bring them with you. You can volunteer anywhere. It doesn't have to be a hospital. Again, it could be a soup kitchen or whatever. But for me, that's my customers. So I got to engage with patients on a regular basis. Of course, I knew we had patients, but I didn't really engage with them, right? I'm in the C-suite, and I'm locked up in an office a lot of times, so I needed to get out. So every week, my son and I, this is my oldest son, we did this for 5 years. We would volunteer. They had a kind of a closed-circuit TV system where they'd play bingo. So 4 of the hospitals are all interconnected, and so hundreds of people would play bingo. And then our job after hours was to take the gift certificates. So you get like a gift certificate for the store, and we would deliver them and then talk to the patients because a lot of times they might be lonely. We talked to them about different things. And so we were delivering, and we had all these kinds of encounters. I'm just giving you, again, just a glimpse. So many stories like this. But we had this encounter where we had to go to Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, which I love, but not the 3rd floor. So when I saw the address, like, okay, here's the patient's name, and it's RBC, Rainbow Babies and Children, 3rd floor, my heart always sank because that's the oncology floor. And having 5 kids myself, and especially at that time, about the same, those ages of who would be treated at Children's Hospital, my heart, like I said, always sank. And so we got up to that floor, and as we approached the room, the mother came out. And the mom came out, and she's like, oh, can I use the gift certificate for the cafeteria? And they really can't, but I'm not going to tell her no. So I was like, yeah, of course, you can use it for whatever you want. So we went down to the cafeteria, and then she went to the grill, and she's like, I need a grilled cheese sandwich. And so the gentleman that was working the grill, he kind of looked up on the marquee. It's like they do hamburgers and cheeseburgers and different things, but there's no grilled cheese sandwich. So he's like, I'm sorry, man, we don't do grilled cheese sandwiches. And she was emphatic. So he was wise, and he said, wait a second, and he got his manager. Manager came up, and she said, I need a grilled cheese sandwich. He said, okay, obviously you can make a grilled cheese sandwich, if you can do burger. So we made the grilled cheese sandwich, and he asked her why. He said, ma'am, here's a grilled cheese sandwich, put in styrofoam, ready to take it back up to the room. And she said, her 13-year-old daughter, for the first time in a year, was allowed to start eating regular food again. Her favorite meal, as a kid, is grilled cheese sandwich. And so this was her first meal. So it was super important to him. So having that connection and just understanding like what it is, like even simple things like just a food, it's just basic things, it makes a difference. And so you need to be that ingrained with your customer that you feel what they feel, that you understand what they're going through. So again, no matter what your particular industry is, you'll have experiences like that. So what I started to do was all my employees, and this would be, again, 1,100 employees spent 1 day a year. I couldn't, ask everyone to volunteer. That's something they have to do on their own. But I did have them shadow a clinician one full day each year. And it changed our organization. So it's the same with your organizations. Have them spend time with the customer. All they had to do was a write-up at the end of it on a SharePoint so everyone could see it. And my favorite, there's so many good stories, but my favorite one is this person said, Mr. Marx, when you came out with this idea, I hated it. Now, they could choose anything they wanted. They could go to surgeries. They could shadow nurses. They could work in a lab, whatever they wanted to do. He said, I hated this idea. I've got a huge backlog. He's a DBA. I got a huge backlog of requests, and this just put me further behind. He said, I've been here for 25 years, and I never knew we had patients. Now, he knew here, but he didn't know here. So to him, he had an IT job. But after that, he knew that he was part of the clinical team. So again, when you get that engaged and you bring others with you to get that engaged with their customers, they start to understand that it's not an IT job, what they're doing, but they're doing whatever you're doing particular in your industry is they're creating safer environments or whatever your particular industry might be. So again, I told you I'm gonna push you a little bit, one level deeper on some of these ideas. So I also served 1 day a week. I took a shift in the OR. So in addition to my job as CIO, I worked a full shift in the OR, 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. Nobody knew except for my boss and my boss in the OR. The people that I worked with, they just thought I was a part-time employee. And so that also enabled me every week. So I deal with the same frustrations you do in the corporate world, the bureaucracy and the different things you have to deal with, and it's just like demotivating. So, but I knew 1 day a week, it's actually more than that because of the volunteering, but 1 day a week, I got to hang out with patients and clinicians. I got to see how the tech worked or didn't work. I got to get new ideas on how to make things better for our patients and improve the quality, improve patient experience, and to help save people's lives. So getting deep with your customers. All right, so one more story on getting deep with your customers. And again, you can do this. Everything I'm talking about is replicable in your industry. So whenever we have meetings of any size, like town hall, things like that, the first speaker is a patient. Again, our customer is the first speaker. So they're tired of hearing me. They're tired of hearing you. We might, like our slides and things like that, but I'm telling you, they hear the same message from us. They want to hear it from someone different, and it comes off better. And so in this case, and we had a different patient every time. I never knew what I was going to get. In this case, the 85-year-old patient shows up wearing a judo outfit. And then I look in the back of the room. There's like 500 people in this room, and I see about 15 more people coming in. It's her dojo. It's the people that she works out with. It's her instructor and her classmates, and they're all there to support her. And she comes up front, 85-year-old woman, and she starts saying, I used to be frustrated because I need a lot of health care, as I get older. Take me 6 to 8 weeks to get an appointment. But ever since you got the portal, so they have a patient portal, I'm able to cut that time in half. Like sometimes I get my appointments in the same week. And then she would break a board. Bam. It's just for sound effect. I mean, it was beautiful. I wish I had it on video. And so she kept talking about the challenges that she had and were overcome by the system that my team built. So instead of me telling them, so instead of you telling your team, have your customer share with the team what it's all about. And she's like, I'm 85 years old, and I can do all this today because of the healing that you all enabled. So much better message coming from a patient, coming from a customer, than coming from me. So the next level is, as I mentioned, clinicians are our customers. So the second speaker at all my events, again, the first speaker you'll hear is a patient. The second speaker you'll hear is a clinician. Again, my two main customer groups. And you should do the same thing. And so this clinician, Dr. Richard Vignes, a cardiac surgeon in Dallas-Fort Worth, there was a high-profile case that came through, a very unusual heart case, and it was publicized, it was in the media, and he saved this person's life. And so he happened to be my speaker set up that particular month. And so he came in, and he said, hey, you all know about what happened. Right? Everyone knew. He said, who in here works at the service desk? So any of the service desk employees that weren't on the service desk at that time he said, stand up. And then he said, he was very specific. He said, when we called because we needed some additional support, you all answered in the first ring, and you were calm and collected, and you helped us. He said, who here is in networking? A bunch of people, he had them stand up, and he talked about how the wireless, has really helps them, and the voice over IP and all that kind of stuff helps their communication. And he's like, who's in charge of Epic, which is our clinical record? And then a bunch of people stood up, and at the end, everyone was standing. And he said, you saved their life. Again, connecting heart to mind, making sure that they know the importance of their role is not a tech job, but they're part of the care team. Or again, in your industry, they're part of that team that enables your product, your services to have an impact locally or around the world. So there's nothing like having that happen. The other thing that we would do is we honor everyone. We honor everyone. And so as a result, we're able to recruit in a heavily competitive environment where we don't pay the most. Other industries tend to pay more than healthcare. So how do we get the best people? So this is the view from an elevator. When the elevator opens up, this is the lobby of IT. And you'll see we won a bunch of awards and things like that, but the most important thing's right in the middle. And there's a frame. And there's unfortunately, over the course of time, over the course of 20 years that Texas Health had been a system, we lost 7 employees out of IT through illness, through accident, those sort of things. So we always wanted their memory to be fresh. So we'd remember every time we came to work, we'd remember our colleagues. And so we had that going on for quite some time, and we had recruited this hotshot network manager, and we were wondering, why did he choose us over the other options that he had that paid more? So I finally had my chance to speak with him, and I asked him that question. I said, I know you had a lot of different options, and you chose us, and we're glad you did, but tell me why. And he said it was easy. When the elevator opened, I saw my dad. So his dad, unknown to me, unknown to the rest of us, had worked at Texas Health in IT 10, 15 years prior. And he said, anyone that honors my dad, and any sort of culture that we have like that, where we connect with people, we connect with our customers, I want to serve there. So I'm going to end with this, and hopefully this story just brings everything I just spoke about together. Connecting deeply with your team in and outside the office, connecting with your customers at a very deep and routine level, and connecting the head, the brain to the heart to make sure that there's alignment, you have transformation. So because of these relationships that were developed with these clinicians, our customers, they knew us not as, I think the keynote earlier today said order takers or partners, but they knew us as sort of like kind of leaders, like trying new things and willing to experiment and innovate. And so whenever there was an issue, they would call us, and we were part of the team that helped come up with solutions. And in this case, this is Texas Health Plano, so you can look up every story that I told you. And this Texas Health Plano, so they called me, and I went, and they said, we have a problem. They said there was these 2 people that had been married and each had kids. It was a Brady Bunch thing, where they got married. And the one thing they wanted was their own kid. So they each had a couple kids, beautiful family, but they wanted to have a child together. And sure enough, the woman got pregnant, the wife got pregnant, and about 3 months into her pregnancy, her husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And it was imminent. And so he was not going to live to see the baby. So we figured out a way, because of these relationships and because of the things that we had done, we figured out a way, mostly clinical, but it was our biomed, that was a key part of this, figured out a way to put him in deep coma, and they would bring him out of coma when the baby was born. So this picture, and if you look at the woman and like just, looking at her husband, I mean, it tells the whole story. But this picture is about the baby's an hour old, and they had 1 hour together before he died. But it's so meaningful, transformative, motivational for our teams to realize we're not just tech, but we're part of something bigger. This another story that happened about the same time is similar, where there was a problem. And again, because we had these relationships outside the office, and we were super tight, willing to do anything for each other, because the clinicians knew us, because we hung out with them, we rounded with them, we spent time in their environment, they called us in for another issue where a dying man's last wish was to die outside in the sunlight, not in a hospital room. And so how do you do that? Because he was on life support. So again, because of biotech aspect, we figured out a way to mobilize his bed. And we had healing gardens, and we were able to close off the healing gardens so his family would have private time. And we brought him down there with his family, and it had been a rainy day, and the clouds opened up, the sunshine came, and the family surrounding him, holding hands, and for them singing hymns as he traded his earthly rags for robes of righteousness. And it was like just this moment that it's just priceless, that you realize just the sanctity of what you get to do and be helpful in transforming lives and impacting organizations and helping them get to next level. And so that's why I'm so passionate about these 3 areas, that you can make this huge difference, again, across industries, whatever it is that's the OKRs or KPIs for your organization, whatever that mission and vision is. If you truly give yourself to your team and get deep with them in and outside of the workplace, if you truly spend time, not the photo op with your customer, but really deeply spend time and understand what they're going through and how they do things, and then figure out a way to connect that why, that head to the heart, you'll have the most amazing tech organization. They won't even think that they're tech anymore. Like my organizations, you ask any person that's ever served with me and ask them what they do, they're going to give you one single answer. And this is across Cleveland Clinic, Texas Health, New York City, where I was CIO. And they'll say this: we save lives. So I appreciate being with you. I want to say one last thing as I finish. I've written a few books. These 2 books are from Mayo Clinic. I wrote these for Mayo Clinic this year. If anyone, just come see me afterwards. If anyone is dealing with some sort of sickness and or know someone that is, and having to navigate healthcare, which is horrible to navigate, I've got a book for you. It's called Diagnose. It's a bestseller, New York Times bestseller, new release. And then I wrote one for inside of healthcare, sort of insiders, but it applies to any sort of tech leader. There's probably one chapter that's healthcare specific, kind of covers some of these same things, but I'm glad just to give these to you, so just see me later. But I'm so thankful to be with you. I consider it a privilege to be amongst my peers. I learned a lot today already, looking forward to learning more tomorrow. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you so much.